All right, so today I'm going to build a computer using the Gamdius Athena M4M. OGs of Craigslist are probably thinking something else right now. Whether you're gaming on the go, working remotely, or setting up a second screen at home, ViewSonic's portable gaming monitors let you play anywhere, anytime, without sacrificing performance. Meet the VX1654 and the VX1754. Ultra slim, ultra light, and built for gamers who want desktop-level power in their backpack. At just 0.7 inches thin, these displays slip into any bag, making them perfect for travel, LAN parties, or creators on the move. And you're getting 144 Hz refresh rate, buttery smooth motion, and AMD FreeSync for tear-free gameplay. And the best part, one cable, a single USB-C handles your power, data, video, and audio. No clutter, no dongles, and no stress. They work with laptops, tablets, phones, and of course your consoles. Switch, PS5, Xbox, you name it. Plus the built-in kickstand cover protects your screen and lets you set up in landscape or portrait wherever you're posted up. Need more than gaming? Well, ViewSonic's full portable lineup includes OLED models, touchscreen options, and even built-in batteries, giving you flexibility to work and play from literally anywhere. Upgrade your mobile setup with the ViewSonic Portable Gaming Series, performance that travels with you. Learn more by clicking the link in the description below. So they're calling this a micro tower. It still holds ATX motherboards and such, but the whole idea behind the Athena M4M, I don't know what M4M stands for, to be honest, but it's the idea of being a little bit more space-savvy while not having to necessarily make caveats in the hardware that you're gonna put in it. So today we're gonna throw a bunch of parts in here and kind of see how well not how well, but like how easy it is to build in. It is a more budget-friendly case. This is currently, there's two versions of this. There's a wood panel version, and then there is the standard version like I have right here. The standard version is $79.99 on the Amazon US store as of today. The wood panel version, which isn't available currently, is $99. The wood trim is cool and all. I think a lot of brands have just started doing that, but for me personally, I'm not that interested in the wood trims. I do like this layout and design. It's pretty standard. Actually reminds me of the case that I did the Tranquility build in for my daughter. I did the green and brown and Noctua and all that sort of stuff. Plenty of ventilation, as you can see. The top, plenty of ventilation. The bottom, lots of ventilation, plus a magnetic fan filter right here. So you can still fit 360 AIOs in this. You can still obviously fit very big graphics cards. In fact, when it comes to the specs, this is what they're calling a micro tower. It supports mini ITX and micro ATX. It also supports micro ATX BTF. I haven't personally seen that motherboard form factor yet, but maybe they're just being future friendly, but it does support BTF in the micro ATX form factor. It does have a 5-volt 3-pin adjustable header because there is RGB on the case. It's made out of tempered glass, SPCC and ABS. So radiator support, it supports a 360 in the top, a 240 in the front, or a 360 in the bottom. Not sure if all of those will work in simultaneously. We'll have to check. Fan support is the same, 3 120s on the top, 3 120s on the bottom, 2 120s on the front, plus a 120 on the rear. Now it does come with 2 pre-installed BK PWM fans for the front and 1 ARGB PWM fan for the back. Supports 1 3.5-inch drive, 1 2.5-inch drive, or 2 2.5-inch drives. I'm assuming you'll lose 3.5 if you do 2 2.5. And then it's got your usual connections, USB 3.0 ×2, 1 USB-C Type-C, your HD audio header, and then your LED control. Now for cooler height, it can fit up to 175 millimeters for your air tower, so that'll fit pretty much everything. Fits graphics cards up to 395 millimeters long, so there is going to be some limitation on how long the graphics cards can be, depending on especially what you put in the front. If you put a radiator and fans and stuff in the front, you're gonna cut into that space some. It supports power supplies up to 150 millimeters in length. We got a little bit of a wobble. That's our table though. Like our table is very bowed. We put so many heavy things on here. So this wobble you're seeing is our table doing like a concave, because look, if I turn it, it goes away. So it's the table. Okay, I want to point that out if you see any teetering on this. 2 captive thumb screws to hold the top panel on. So as you can see right now, the top panel is also filtered with non-magnetic filter. It just slides in there. If you're going to be doing top exhaust, I'd recommend removing that so you have better airflow. Porosity looks to be about 50% or maybe slightly greater than 50%. So plenty of airflow there. Back panel is toolless. It just pops off. You can see we have a dust filter that filters this entire thing. So if you do end up in a negative pressure situation in some way, this will at least filter any of that. If you have a positive pressure going in your case, I would maybe recommend taking this out. So you got some things that you can play with in terms of airflow optimization. We'll come back to that in a second. Front panel should just pop off. There it is. Also fully filtered, not magnetic. They do just kind of form fit in there. So to get the filter out, you got to kind of squish it, and then you can get the filter out. It's just literally cut screen material. So nothing special there. They could have done magnetic if they wanted, because this is a steel construction, but getting the filter back in does require a little bit of finagling. You don't want to bend the screen or the mesh material too much, because it will crease, because it is technically a metal. But you can see right now, it's not the easiest to get back in. I just want to point that out. So that's why I'm showing this in real time here. There we go. It is back in. I did cause a couple creases from the bend, but you can't really see it from that side. Here are the two pre-installed fans on the front, which we talked about. They are just black, no RGB. And then it does have an RGB fan pre-installed in the back. Here is your tempered glass side panel, which does have a metal support frame at the top and the bottom. And I want to measure that glass. I'm guessing it's probably about 3 millimeters. 3.22. So could be some caliper variance in there, but yeah, a little over 3 millimeters. Didn't feel as thick as a 4. Ask me how I know. You can see in the bottom right here though, here is your built-in rail system for your fans. You can see right here, the fan does overhang a little bit of the groove. So depending on how you have your radiator set in here, anything that overhangs in the front, like say you put another radiator or you try to put a rad right here, which to be honest, I don't think you'll be able to because of the PSU shroud. Does say it supports 240 in the front, but not all radiators are created equal. Some of them are thicker, some have little plates attached to the side for bezels and decorative pieces. So keep in mind, some of them might interfere with the PSU shroud right there. Same thing with the top though. You can see how the top does slightly overhang where these fans are right there. So if you're going with fans and a rad on the top, you're gonna end up having encroachment. So you're not gonna be able to do simultaneous radiators on the top, front, and bottom if you're trying to go with the max size that's in there. So this is a pretty standard 360 millimeter radiator. It's a 30 mil by 360 or 120 millimeter fans. It's a Corsair brand. So to show you, to get it in there, so what it's hitting on right now are the cables right down there in the corner. If you look straight down on that, you can see those cables actually overhang over those screw holes. So whether you're putting fans down there or a radiator, it's gonna kind of push against that. So that's what was kind of having to be squished into place right now. But once I put this radiator in here, you'll be able to see what I mean about having to consider the front fans and the overhang. So right now, I can add fans to the front of that, no problem whatsoever. There you go, just as an example. I know they're exhausting right now, doesn't matter, it's about the fitment. So you can see how these overhang the front fans. So that means I would not be able to run a 240 in the front and a 360 on the bottom. Now I could technically run a 240 in the front still if I slid these front fans up a little bit. That way we would have room on the bottom. I think we would have enough, maybe not though. You can see we only have about maybe 10 or 12 more millimeters of available height to slide that up. But then all we're gonna do is get more involved in encroaching in the top spot right here to where we might even start hitting fans. So you can choose two. Like you can have a bottom radiator and you can probably have a top radiator, but you're not having a front radiator and a top and a bottom if you're trying to max out the size. Like I said, if I was doing a 240 and a 240 down there and a 240 in the front, that would all be fine. But you're not gonna get two 360s and a 240. I'm curious as to whether or not, because we have more room down here than we do up here, if we're gonna have the same issue with hitting the front fans with this rad. So let's see. And that's the fitting side right there, which will have even less room. So we can fit a 360 in the top and a 360 in the bottom. I would probably just do that and let fresh air come in the front. I wouldn't try and do a triple rad setup. But you can fit a 360 in the bottom and a 360 in the top, but you're not fitting a 240 in the front simultaneously. So, and that's sticking with like normal sizes, by the way. 25 mil fan and a 30 mil rad. That's a total of 55 millimeters of clearance you gotta deal with. Okay, so like I said, this is a micro ATX. So I think I have a micro ATX board back there somewhere. We do have very small and very limited adjustability, but we do have a GPU support right here. It's rubberized too, so it shouldn't scratch your graphics card. That is adjustable via a screw that you loosen on the back. We've got this interesting little door right here that has a screw that's holding it down. I would have preferred that to just be a magnet personally, but this is just to kind of hide away some of these front panel connectors right there. Does it come out? Nope, it doesn't just slide up or off. You can unscrew it right here if you want. So if you want to get rid of this door entirely, you can by removing these two screws, but that's just to make this area a little bit more tidy. Because the power supply is not in the rear of the case, it is actually in the front of the case mounted vertically right here. You have this extension cable that is bundled in with everything else on the front panel connector right now. And then your cable management is going to be kind of tight depending on the length of your power supply. Now you do have a pretty decent amount of depth behind the motherboard tray to be able to fit your cables back here. But keep in mind, because it's a smaller chassis, if you have long cables, that's more bundling you have to deal with for cable management, which would kind of get in the way, in my opinion. These are our screws and such. We don't even get a box. Okay, that's fine. Get a handful of zip ties, what, 5 of those. Motherboard screws, an extra case snap. Here's the power supply extension cable. Here are the front panel connectors. This is a connection cable that's going to be plugging into your motherboard. That's our power switch, technically right there. Oh, and then everything's still bundled here, yeah. There's a lot of, I feel like there's a lot of wires here for front panel connection stuff, but whatever. That's because we do have a built-in powered hub right here. So if we're gonna add more fans, we do have room for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right, we have 5 more slots available to us on that hub. So you can control everything off of one header. Same thing with your RGB right here. It does have built-in case lighting that you can control through a button on the front, or you can plug this into your motherboard and control it through your motherboard lighting. That's kind of it for the tour. It's pretty straightforward. Oh yeah, and then this guy right here, this is your hard drive mount. I kind of work around the cables here. This is how you can mount your 1 3.5 and 1 2.5 or 2 2.5s. That's pretty much your options there. So this, it's just a tray that you mount them to, and then you just mount that back on. This is also how you access a very large opening for the back of your motherboard, so that if you need to access it for putting a cooler tower or a water block on, you can do that. But this is, like I said, look, we have BTF support on this. There's not a lot of metal there. There's not a lot of metal there, but I haven't even looked to see if there even is a micro ATX BTF. If there is, tell me down below what motherboard it is. All right, I have some stuff to put in here because they gave us some stuff to throw in there. I think it's a pretty sick looking little build, actually. It's mostly blacked out. I went with the black fans on the bottom they provided, so they're 3 intakes blowing right up on the GPU. This is just a Founders Edition 5090. Nothing special. It's not much, but it's mine, right? Okay, yeah, sarcasm, obviously. So let's talk about length here real quick. There's actually 2 different figures. The review guide says the graphics card fitment is up to 395 millimeters long, but the box says 430 millimeters long. I have a theory. You can fit a maximum up to 430 if there's no front fans, potentially. But if there's front fans, it's probably 395 comfortably. Now, if you're running all bottom intakes, you could technically get away from that, but I wouldn't want to get rid of the front intake too, because we've seen the bottom intake gets awfully blocked by the GPU. I would still want fresh air that's not being warmed up by the GPU to hit the other components on here. 360 AIO fits fine, but you got to go in at like an angle to kind of like slot it in there. And then the backside, not the neatest or prettiest, but it's all there. It all fits. I haven't put the side panel on yet. We'll see. Obviously, I have a lot of cables right here where the hard drive would go. So if I was running a 3.5-inch hard drive, that would take up the depth I need. I'll be honest, I didn't spend a lot of time on cable management though. Their fans are daisy chainable, but they're full length with daisy chains on the end, which leads to a lot of cable clutter and bundling. So if you were to run fans that are like interconnecting daisy chain, you would have a much cleaner wiring situation back here. Let's see, what else do I want to talk about here? The top fans right now are kind of going full blast. So when we do our smoke test in a minute, It's 100% because they're plugged into the AIO, which is plugged into the USB, not seeing its own software yet. So that's why it just says GEMDIAS on their AIO with their screen, but this isn't about the AIO. I do have the header for the AIO plugged into the CPU optional or the AIO header for the motherboard, but because it's sitting in BIOS right now, there's no OS on this drive, it's just defaulting to full speed. So I want to point that out there right now. One thing I want to point out too, I'm not a fan of this cable right here. I had to take out the slack, as you can see, and kind of loop it down like that, because with it long, there was no way to like neatly or comfortably like loop this. So I had to sort of do that. And as you can see, I have to put quite the bend on it to make it clear the side panel. Now it has this protective sleeve right here to keep it from going too tight, but it barely clears. Now that's gonna land in different spots depending on your power supply. So if it's even closer to the bottom, maybe that could be a problem. But I had to get some relief out of it by just kind of looping it down like that. So that's something to point out. Any other nuances on this case that I didn't really like? Oh, there's not a lot of room for the 24 pin. You see where my finger is right here? The 24 pin barely fits through that opening. And that's because you can see the motherboard overhangs that grommet. Now this is just a regular MATX motherboard. So depending on the thickness of your 24 pin cable, like plug-in, some of them are kind of fat. This is just like a standard like plastic, you know, nothing crazy, not extra beefiness or anything. You might have to run that cable through that grommet and then put your motherboard down to have enough clearance to get the plug through. So that's something worth pointing out. Didn't have a whole lot of other complaints though, to be honest. Everything went together nicely. I didn't have to really finagle anything. Their own power supply barely fits in there. So when it comes to the power supply length supported up to 150 millimeters, yeah, if you've got a longer than standard power supply, it's probably not going to comfortably fit right there. Now remember, because we have that shroud, it's kind of like a scoop to push the cables out. So flat cables like this are not too difficult to get to fit. Now, let's be honest, most people who would have a 5090 or really big graphics card that might have a problem fitting in this aren't shopping $79 cases. But one of the things I love about brands like GEMDIAS is the fact that they have really entered the market in trying to give you more value, but also have some feature sets with those values. Like for instance, all the edges on this case are rounded. You're not gonna worry about cutting or slicing any of your cables. I've had older cases that were just like sharp. If you pull the cable management too tight, you could literally bridge out wires on your system or short your wires because you could slice into them. But yeah, everything's curved. Everything's got a pretty decent fitment. There's no rattling. A little bit on the top maybe. That's just because this top piece right here is floating on top of the rail system for the top fans. So they're just kind of like bouncing on here. Now, unless your fans are gonna start rattling real bad, you shouldn't hear any rattling in your system. But that's just something to keep in mind. It would have been nice to maybe have a little rubber piece, a little isolator or something there. These are just little things though that do add up. But I'll tell you what though, from the first time we saw brands like GEMDIAS in their very first cases to the stuff they're introducing now, you can tell they've definitely like improved the quality. And by improved the quality, I mean, it costs more, but I feel like the quality is exponentially getting better than the cost increase. You're getting more quality increase versus cost increase. Now, some of the first cases I've seen from GEMDIAS were like $40 at Micro Center. That's the first place I actually saw GEMDIAS was at Micro Center. And we used it in a budget build a while back. But now for 80 bucks, I feel like we've got some really good competition, some really good airflow. We'll demonstrate that in a second. Where now you don't feel like you have to really compromise on quality for cost. So let me put my light in here and let's do our smoke test and we'll wrap this one up. I don't think we're gonna have any problem picking up air from underneath. In fact, I can feel the airflow with my hand. There's a fairly large height for these feet and it's open all the way around. So it's gonna pull in, look at this. Absolutely no problems pulling in air. Wow, look at that front updraft. It just straight through. So let's check the front. You know what I find to be quite interesting? This back fan almost looks useless. Now that could be because of this fan speeds right now. They're not balanced. These top fans are going 100%. The bottom fans are not going 100%. Like there's a header differential between these. But this kind of shows like with imbalanced airflow, and that's not about the case design, this is about your fan speeds. This rear fan isn't really exhausting any air. See, check this out. It's all going through the AIO first Barely any of it is reaching that fan. Look at that. It's a little negative pressured right now simply because of the speed of the fans on the top. That wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing for cooling. Negative pressure, it's only an issue if you don't have enough ventilation to feed the amount of air it's asking to be brought in, but it's bringing in dust and stuff with it, obviously. And now the top, like I said, those fans, they are definitely pushing some air. That's kind of crazy. Here's our true test on negative pressure right now. Will it pull in air through these back vents? Okay, so that's the power supply right there. So you can see the power supply exhaust. And then obviously down here, that's intaking from the bottom. So yeah, there would definitely be some air balancing that needs to happen just because of the motherboard headers and such. It's just the way that the controller is happening for the AIO. That's not really a case thing. But man, that is some velocity right there. It's going all the way to the ceiling. Holy crap. That is kind of crazy. And then these fans back here clearly blow right onto the GPU. So it's almost like these two fans feed the GPU directly. That just continues updraft air that makes its way to the AIO, and then those supply the AIO. That rear fan almost feels like it should be turned into an intake, personally. In fact, I can do that real quick. Let me flip that around to an intake and see what happens. Yeah, see, it's no longer negative. Just flip it around that one fan. You can see the air come around into the intake down there. See, now it's no longer trying to come in that vent. It's either going in the fan right there, which is just going straight up into the AIO. I don't have to worry about the AIO air getting recirculated because it's getting pushed away so far from the intake here. I mean, look at this. Let's see if there's any recirculation happening here. No, there is not. There is no recirculation happening here. None at all. But yeah, now the positive pressure, now we're all positive pressure. Bro. All right, so the Gamdias Athena M4M, I think it's a pretty solid case for 80 bucks. You get the 3 fans that come with it. There are other parts, obviously, I threw in here. I'm not even sure what the price of the AIO and stuff is, but that's neither here nor there. There's lots of options when it comes to that sort of stuff. Plenty of airflow. Doesn't kill like your desk space. It's got a fairly short footprint, if you will. I mean, the height makes no difference unless you're worried about like shelving or something. But so in terms of dimensions, it's 446 millimeters long, 235 millimeters wide, and 347 millimeters high. So it's a pretty small volume case, but it definitely could cool high-end components without any sort of issues right there. I'll put links to it down in the description below. It's available on Amazon. I mean, it's an affiliate link. It does help us out if you guys grab anything from there. But I feel like the build quality is good. It's an attractive looking case. Not much else to say. I mean, there's only so many ways you can design a box to put your parts in. But this one has clearly got the airflow. So sound off, guys, in the comments below what you guys are looking for in a PC case. What are your most important features? Like, what do you consider a gimmick, and what do you consider a must-have for PC building these days? RGB, I think, is something most people are like, meh, I don't care. It's kind of why I chose to put the black fans in the bottom. We just kept it a little bit more subtle. But man, there's so many choices out there. All right, guys, thanks for watching. As always, we'll see you in the next one.